Hey guys, hello and welcome back to the second part of IGCSE Global Perspective Written Examination Masterclass. In the last video, the first part, we had discussed about question number 1 and question number 2 in depth. What are the marks distribution, then how to attempt those questions, what are you expected to do as a student, and most importantly, how to frame the correct answer for each type of question. In today's class, we are going to look at question number 3 and question number 4 of written examination for global perspective. But before we start with the class, I hope you have watched the first part. I have linked that in the description below, and also do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle here. Also, you will find the link of the same in the description below, because I post a lot of information, and most importantly the assessments and the assignments, whatever PDFs and the worksheet, I try to link it on the story of my Instagram. Moving ahead with the class, I would like to first tell you is, before we start with the class, make sure you have grabbed a pen and a book wherein you are maintaining notes and you are sitting in a distraction free room. Okay, because it is important to watch this full video in one single shot without wasting any part and without missing any part of the video. So it is important you make sure you are arranging for yourself a distraction free room for this masterclass. Moving on to my screen now, as you all can see on my screen, you can see the question number 3 might ask candidates, for example, to evaluate the effectiveness of argument. So basically, whatever arguments are mentioned in the question, in the source, you have to analyze and evaluate the effectiveness of that particular argument. Very important thing over here is making a judgment. So it is highly personal response question, because based on the arguments you are going to make a judgment about which is the most convincing. Now, as you all can see here, the yellow color boxes gives you some important keywords utilized to frame this question number 3. And it is extremely important and a crucial part to know the exact meaning of each and every keyword to attempt the question and make it as relevant as possible, make the answer as relevant as possible. So as you all can see, is first thing is opinion. What do you mean by opinion? Opinion is my personal thought process about a subject. It might not be same for different people. It can vary from people to people, and it is again perspective based. I can have some perspective about something, you can have some perspective about certain things. So that is what is opinion. Whenever you are giving opinion, whenever you are asked to give an opinion, always try to back it up with facts or statistics. That makes your opinion much more convincing. Let's see the exact meaning. Generally, let's see the exact meaning of the opinion. Next is your fact. What is a fact? It is something which can be checked or proved. Okay, so if I'm saying that, okay, the sun rises from the east, it's a fact. How can I prove that it's a fact? I can show you, I can prove it that it is a fact. So very important thing over here is, whenever you are asked to write few facts, please talk with respect to statistics. Or if you are mentioning any fact, give some statistics or data in the answer. That will basically prove that this particular sentence written by you is a fact. Okay. Now the next important thing is value judgment. Okay. So now talking about value judgment. Value judgment is a particular type of opinion. It is a subjective assessment based on the code of values concerning what is right and wrong. A decision based on moral principles or beliefs, not based upon the facts which can be checked or proved. When I say value judgment, it is basically dependent on the ethics that we follow. It can vary from region to region. So let's say if you are following certain set of ethics and value, your value judgment will be different, but you have to specify what is the logic behind it. Next is your bias. Bias is inclination or prejudice for or against one person or group, especially in a very considered to be unfair. So when I say a particular opinion was biased, that could be because it it gives me certain sort of I get a benefit out of it if I follow that particular opinion. So that might not be fair, you know, in terms of giving out as an opinion. You are just you have your own vested interest, or the source, the person who is speaking or talking about it, has some vested interest in that particular opinion. So that is your bias. Next is vested interest. If you have a personal stake in something which causes you to be biased toward, you have a vested interest in it. It is pretty straightforward, and the bias and vested interest both are linked. Generally, a person is biased or an opinion is biased when they have some vested interest in the same. Next is your prediction. Generally defined as a statement suggesting something which is likely to happen in the future. So which is important over here, based on facts. Based on facts or data. Okay. All right. Now moving ahead with the next part is, we have understood all the each and every word's meaning. These are the keywords in the question. Now let's understand what is the type of question that is asked. Okay. So moving on to question number 3. For this question, you must analyze two people's perspective. Very, very, very important, and it carries a lot of marks as well. It is carrying good 15 marks. And what they do is they give you the important points to be considered. So you are analyzing two people's perspective on an issue and decide whose argument is more convincing. So what you're doing is you are passing a judgment based on what factors that we'll look at later. So your argument should consider both arguments. This means that when you write each point, you should be explicitly referring, copying from the source to both argument and making comparison, not just focusing on one of them throughout. When I say explicit, that means you have to directly pick up from the source and use it in your answer and compare what they said, and then passing your final conclusion or the decision or the opinion, I would say. So you should consider the following. What are the important things? The strengths of the reasoning and evidence. Then we have the use of language, different types of evidences produced or utilized by them. So what are the strengths? First of all, identify the evidences. Second, that is, you will underline and highlight the evidences. Second, identify the strengths. Okay. And the third is you will identify the tone or the use of language. Okay, I hope I have made pretty clear. I have made myself pretty clear over here. So if you see 15 marks, 5 marks, 5 marks and 5 marks. Each point will carry roughly 5 marks. Alright. Moving on to the next part, that is points to consider when judging whose argument is more convincing. Very important. Very, 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 very important slide. I would want all of you to note it down, not take a screenshot, pause my video, note it down. Because when you write something, it registers in your head. Tomorrow, even if you don't refer to this particular paper, you will still remember what you had written. Okay. So, strengths of reasoning. When you are answering strengths of reasoning, exactly follow this format. Logic, structure, balance, claims. Okay. One sentences or two sentences which are non-repetitive and relevant. Very important. Then we have use of language. What is the tone? It is exaggerated or it is precise, it is emotive. Okay, what type of tone is utilized to convince that particular argument or to convey that particular argument? Talk about it. Then the clarity in the use of language, what sort of vocabulary is used, how well the writer is able to convey what he or she is trying to convey. Talk about that. Then source of bias, then local interest. Okay, now when you want to prove that a person is biased, so talk about this: local interest, personal values, experience, economics. All these points will help you to prove that a particular argument was a biased argument and we should not consider that. Generally, you have to prove that. So how will you prove that? Answer these four points, you will be able to prove it. What are the evidences that you should be collecting? Very important point. So when I talk about evidence, okay, you have to talk about range of information and depth. You have to talk about relevance, sufficiency, sample, source. What are the sources? What a source, and I would say authenticity of the source. Authenticity. Okay. Date, how recent it is. different types of information: facts, opinions, value, anecdotes. So whenever you are referring to evidence, also classify it in this format. And testimony. Testimony is from experience or expertise. So if somebody is giving out his or her experience or expertise, that is called as a testimony. So these are the points you have to consider while you are basically analyzing or evaluating your arguments. Okay, clear? All right, so the next part is, for each and every part, what you have to do is, each section that you have 5 marks, I showed you in the previous slide, it's divided into 5 marks. Now each 5 marks should contain 3 or more developed point. How will you develop the point? Based on all these things, all these, I would say, okay, whatever I have shown over here, you have to develop your points based on that. Next is, you have to point must offer a structured evaluation or of both arguments and make comparisons. Very, very important. Must support your answer with quoted evidence from the source. Very, very important. They clearly mention that you have to explicitly pick up things from the source and quote it in the answer when you are comparing two arguments. So here you do not have to just talk in your own words. You have to just pick up a particular quote, what are made by two different people, quotes or arguments, explicit words or sentences made by the two different people and their point of views. Quote it in your writing and explain with respect to that. Very important. A clear judgment is reached in your conclusion. So after going through all these processes, you reach a clear judgment. That is very, very, very important, because that's what you were supposed to do. Okay. Now the next part of the question is, let's understand the structure of the question. So this is the format that we will be following, which is a Peel format. Peel starts for P states whose argument is more convincing and why. Explain the state of source evidence to support your argument. So let's say if you are saying person's A argument is more convincing, you have to give your evidences and facts. Okay, explicit the states the explicitly state from the source evidence. Okay, fine, we have talked about it. The argument states, this is the phrase that you can start your sentence with. The language that person one uses, such as, this is the another phrase, learn it. Explain why it is more convincing. Okay, then the other argument. Okay, person two argument are weak as they state. So when you say they are weak, first start clearly with that particular sentence. So these are the three template of the structures which you can use. E stands for explain the reasoning why one argument is better than another. So if you're taking 3 arguments for person 1 and 3 arguments for person 2, when you take both the arguments, explain each and every arguments why this argument is better than the other one, with respect to what? With respect to these points: strengths of reasoning, use of language, source of bias, evidences. So with respect to these 4 points, explain which argument is better, and then pass your judgment that finally this person's arguments are better. Point 2, repeat above. Point 3, repeat above. So this is for point 1, point 2, point 3. Conclusion, give a clear judgment as to which person you feel offers a better argument, and reiterate this by repeating the major points that you have looked at above. So in the conclusion for this particular question, for each argument you will follow Peel structure. Point 1, point 2, point 3, you are supposed to take 3 arguments. So in total 6 arguments, 3 from person 1, 3 from person 2. Compare each argument in Peel format, and then at the end you will write the conclusion, which argument is better and why, and which pointers you felt were better, talk about it. Okay, I hope this part is clear to you all. Moving on to the next slide. Again over here is a question from your paper. So what I would want you to do is to pause over here, go through this and try answering this in the comment below. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at your answers, and I'll try to revert back on the same with the better answers. Another thing, I would request all of you to help each other so we can you can answer for each other's questions and perspective. This will help all of us to develop different perspectives for the same answer. And that is what we are trying to do in global perspective, isn't it? All right. So let's go ahead with the next part, that is question number 4. So question number 4 is for 24 marks. That is the maximum marks a question is maximum marks allocated to a particular question, and it comprises of extended answer requiring candidates to respond to source material. Candidates might, for example, be asked to use the source material to make a case to support an opinion or a perspective. So this is more intense question with respect to critical thinking. You have to think from different perspective, and then you might be asked to make a case to support a particular perspective or an opinion. Candidates are expected to argue using reasons and evidences to justify their opinions and judgment about the issue. In question number 3, you were comparing two arguments. In question number 4, you are putting forth your argument, and you have to make sure that your argument is better than any argument given in the book, given in the sources. Of course, you have to take the references and the statistic from the sources, but you have to explain your perspective and point of view. Candidates are expected to use and develop the material found in the sources, but should not go beyond simply repeating or recycling without adaptation. As I told you, keep it non-repetitive and relevant. That is the key to answer any question. When you repeat things over and over again, you don't get any extra marks, but you end up losing marks for repeating it over and over again. But make sure you are keeping it to the point and specific. Other material may be introduced, but it is not necessary to gain full marks. You can introduce few other database apart from the source, but it's not a mandatory thing. Cambridge is not expecting you to have knowledge, a vast range of statistical knowledge-based information about that concept. So yes, if you know it out of your GK general knowledge, that is fine, but it is not mandatory. Let's understand the course of action and how it might impact the following. So reference to scale, reference to scale of impact on the problem, reference to different. So these are type of questions that we can have for question number 4. Reference to different consequences and implications for individuals, groups and government. Impact on patterns of trade and employment locally, nationally and globally. All the 3 perspectives needs to be explained well. How long it might take to make a difference. The effects of cultural differences and belief on the actions and its outcome. Barrier to change. The power of collective action. Cooperation between countries over heritage issues. The difficulties of changing individual behavior. The influence of individuals and groups acting locally. The role of vested interest and power differences. Potential conflicts of interest. Difficulties in coordinating globally and across multiple independent countries. Cost and access to resources to implement change. Alternative local and global responses and action. Other reasonable responses. So these are the different type of questions that can be asked in question number 4. Okay, so you guys can take a screenshot, but I don't feel once you understand what it is all about, you will be able to answer the question. So if you want, you can take a screenshot. You can skip writing this part, but just read it a couple of times. You can pause the video here, read it a couple of times, and then go ahead with the next part. Okay, now moving on to the next part, that is what mark scheme says. A very good response is clear, well-supported reasoning about the recommended course of action. Different arguments and perspectives are clearly considered. The response contains a wide range of clearly reasoned points and or evidence to support the views expressed with 4 or more developed points and some. So technically, make sure you write around 6 to 8 points. So even if a couple of your points are underdeveloped, still you end up getting full marks. It is very important, and the response is very well structured to explain how to write with an answer with an example. I am going to shoot another video for that, so do not forget to subscribe to this channel if you have not, because in that particular video I'll dedicate it only to solving a past paper wherein I discuss how each type of answers questions can be attempted. Okay, all right. So the next thing is, again, question number 4 follows the peel format. I'm not going to repeat it all over again. What you have to do is just go through it once, pause the video here and go through it once. Alright. So here we have question number 4 example. You can pause, take a screenshot, solve it, try answering that in the comment, and helping your other peers to give your feedback to their answers based on the video you have watched right now. Okay, so I hope you all have enjoyed and learned a lot from these two master classes of Global Perspective. Part 1, which I have linked in the description, and this is your part 2, Global Perspective written examination. I'm sure I'll be coming with much more master classes on Global Perspective, which is a second one would be individual reports and team projects, how to write, with some examples discussed in the class. Also, do not forget to follow me on my Instagram. If you like this video, share it with your classmates, share it within your classroom groups so that other people can be benefited, and yes, they can participate in the discussion in the comment section below. So until then, take care. Bye bye. See you in my next video.